chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. Christ crucified. And I, brethren, when I come to you, did not come with excellence of speech or with wisdom, declaring to you the testimony of God. For I determined not to know anything among you except Jesus Christ, of whom is crucified. Amen. Pastor?
Good morning. It's nice to be here with you today. I was going to preach on Christ and Him crucified, but I'd like to ask a favor of you. Thank you, Carlos. I think I know who the boss is here. I'm giving a series on Revelation in Hammond. That seems awfully loud. Is that too loud? Is it okay? It really reverberates with me. And I'd like to try it out on you. It's on Revelation, and I'm giving a series of, I believe, 8 lectures at the library there, open to the public. And so I'd like to present this to you. I'm going to give you lecture 1 and 2, combine them. I gave lecture 1, and it's only like 7 minutes. No, it's longer than that. But I think I need a little bit more so that the people can hear it, and I think it'll work. So I'm going to hook up my iPad here. Better get it on the right side, huh? Let's see if that works. Let's pray. Father in heaven, bless me as I speak to your people, Lord, the sheep of your pasture, Lord. I'm thankful for them, and I'm thankful that you've given us the message that we have for the world, Lord, a message of salvation and love for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right. I think we should probably turn these lights off if this is going to work. There you go. How do you like that? Do you like the picture? A little scary, isn't it? Well, that's what people think about Revelation, isn't it? Good evening. I'm glad you all could come today to a message on Revelation. I'm glad you could come because Jesus has a message for you. We'll be studying the Revelation, that is, the apocalypse of Jesus Christ, which God gave to show his servants what soon must take place. So, what is an apocalypse? Have you heard of the zombie apocalypse? Or the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse? Sounds like a disaster, doesn't it? But actually, it doesn't mean disaster. It means an unveiling. In fact, Jesus gave a message to us so that we might know something. He wants to reveal some unknown thing for us. He made it known, that is, the Greek word is seminaro, to show by symbols. So Revelation is a book of symbols. My purpose is to give you understanding of this very interesting and fascinating book. Why is this important? People are scared. We hear that the environment is being destroyed, climate change, environmental disasters and destruction, anarchy in the streets, lawlessness. You've heard of it? political turmoil. And Revelation gives us some answers to those problems. Now you might say, well, wait a minute. This book is 2,000 years old. How can it possibly have an answer for us? Well, I want to show you tonight how that can be. The book of Revelation is full of Jesus. The church has been richly blessed by the names, offices, and attributes of Jesus presented in this book. You really can't think of the New Testament without the book of Revelation. It just sort of falls flat in a way. And Jesus is the focus of the book. One man found 36 different names given to Jesus in the book of Revelation. Here's an example. In Revelation 19, Jesus is shown on a white horse. Now, John could have just said, Jesus is coming again, but instead he gives us this image. Heaven was standing open, and there before me was a white horse, whose rider is called Faithful and True. With justice he judges and makes war. His eyes are like blazing fire, and on his head are many crowns. He has a name written on him that no one knows but he himself. Now, wait a minute. What's the value of a name that no one knows but you? No one can even call you that name because they don't know it. You're the only one. What does that mean? Well, if you remember from the Old Testament, there was a man called Jacob who wrestled with God. And after the match, God said to him, "Your name will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel," which means victorious. Jesus has been victorious, and he has gone through an experience that no one else in the universe has. And so he has a name that no one knows but he himself, because he's the only one that has gone through that experience. And then it says, his robe is dipped in blood. Excuse me? Why would that be there? Well, you remember the communion service. What is Jesus having us remember? You do this to remember his death till he comes, right? Now, why not the resurrection? Isn't that a little bit more positive? Jesus wants us to remember him because of his death. Because God, the God of life, died for us. The God of life. You know, for Jesus, life, getting people alive, that's easy. When he was on earth, he could just do it. And when the day comes to raise everybody, he can just do it. But dying, that's a big deal. And so he wants us to remember that. And so his robe is dipped in death, because that's what he went through. That's a sobering thought, isn't it? But these are the images that Revelation gives to us. There's celebration in Revelation. It's full of celebration. The characters are vivid and lively with an interest in the proceedings. There's rejoicing at the victory of Jesus. And at the end, the earth is made new. The tears are dried. Death is gone. Talk about a celebration. It's not a disaster. It's a celebration. It's there. Keys to the interpretation. The visions are largely symbolic. The visions are repetitive. I will explain this a bit later, but the visions repeat time over and over again. There are numerous allusions to the Old Testament that give clues to interpretation. Almost every verse has an Old Testament allusion. Now, when people think of the book of Revelation and they sit down and, I've got to read this book, they start reading it, and it seems like a hodgepodge. I mean, so confusing, this and that, back and forth, up and down. They close the book. I can't understand this. There's no organization. How can I possibly know what Jesus has for me? Well, I want to show you some reasons why we can understand. The book is called Revelation. You're supposed to see something. Something's to be revealed. And it's from Jesus. Deuteronomy 29:29 says this, "The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us and our children." So, since the very beginning of the book starts with the word revelation, this is something revealed. We can know it, and Jesus wants us to know it. Besides that, there's a blessing. Right at the beginning of the book, it says, anyone who hears this or reads it will be blessed. You want a blessing, don't you? This book requires study. It does not reveal its secrets to the casual reader, but to people that are ready to think about this and try to understand it. Organization. Revelation can be organized in more than one way. I will show you two which seem to be the most reasonable. The first of these is called a chiasm. What is a chiasm? The name comes from the Greek letter X. It has a back and forth quality. It was a common literary device among the ancients and is recognized more recently. It has been recognized more recently. Here's an example. Definition. Chiasm is a repetition of similar ideas in the reverse sequence, A, B, B, A. Here are some examples. For example, Mark 2:27. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Do you see how that works? A, B, B, A. Sabbath, man, man, Sabbath. Here's a larger one. The book of Leviticus is a chiasm. You can see that it starts with ritual, then priesthood, then purity, and in the center, the Day of Atonement, then back again, purity, priesthood, and ritual. The ancients liked that. Here's another one in Daniel. Chapter 2, vision of the four kingdoms. Chapter 3, trial of God's people, the fiery furnace. Chapter 4, a king confronted and humbled. Chapter 5, a king confronted and killed. Chapter 6, trial of God's people, the lion's den. And chapter 7, the vision of four kingdoms. Do you see the chiastic structure there? You're so quiet. Nobody's sleeping? Revelation's sevenfold chiasm. The whole book is organized in a chiastic structure. First of all, there's a prologue. That means an introduction. Secondly, the message to the seven churches, promises to overcomers. Second, the seven seals, God's work to elevate humanity. Then the seven trumpets, God's wrath mixed with mercy. Then the center of the book, the great conflict between Christ and the serpent. And then, in reverse order, the seven plagues, God's wrath unmixed with mercy. And then the consummation, God's work for humanity completed. Finally, the restored earth, God's promises to overcomers fulfilled. This is the chiastic structure of Revelation. And it is structured, and when you read the book and think about this, you can understand it much better. There's another way to organize the book, the sanctuary scenes. This is to note that the visions are each introduced by a scene from the Hebrew sanctuary. The scenes are followed by God's acts from the sanctuary. You're acquainted with the Hebrew sanctuary, but a lot of people aren't. It had three parts: the courtyard where the sacrifices were made, the holy place, which contained the seven-branched lampstand, the altar of incense and the table of showbread, and finally the most holy place, which contained the Ark of the Covenant. And Revelation is divided into scenes from the sanctuary. Here's the Hebrew sanctuary. I don't have my pointer with me, but you can see on the left is the altar of sacrifice, and then there's a priest there, and then the holy place. Can you see this okay? The 7-branch candlestand, the Hebrew, the showbread, and the altar of incense, and then on the right, the Ark of the Covenant. This is the sanctuary. And so there are sanctuary scenes in Revelation. By the way, the Ark of the Covenant is a symbol of the throne of heaven where God dwells. That's where the Shekinah glory dwelt in the Hebrew temple. Revelation sanctuary scenes. I'm going to go over these individually. Scene 1 is Jesus among the candlesticks, or the lampstands, and this introduces the 7 churches. Second, John sees a door sits upon it. This introduces the 7 seals. Then there's an angel standing at the altar with a censer full of incense. He takes this censer and fills it with fire and casts it to earth. This introduces the 7 trumpets. Then the Ark of the Covenant is brought to view in Revelation 11:19. There is lightning and hail and other manifestations of God. This is the great conflict between Christ and the serpent. In Revelation 15, the temple is filled with smoke. In fact, everyone's driven from the temple, and intercession ceases. This introduced the 7 last plagues. Scene 6, we're in the throne room again, and the 24 elders and the 4 creatures fall down and worship God, who is seated on the throne. There's much celebration in this scene. It's the eschatological consummation. And finally, we're in the throne room again, and God says from the throne, I will make everything new. This is the new Jerusalem and the restored earth. So we have a prologue at the beginning, an epilogue at the end, and then 7 sanctuary scenes. And so both of these show the organization of Revelation. Note these 2 different ideas of organization, yet we come up with a prologue, epilogue, and 7 internal sections. I believe this shows that such an organization is true and reasonable and was in the mind of John. And I will use this structure to help discover the meaning of this wonderful book. Next, interpretation. The 4 schools. Have you heard of the 4 schools? Some of you? There are 4 ways or schools to broadly interpret the visions of this book. The school of the preterists, the historicists, the futurists, and the idealists. Each school has a different way of viewing the visions. And this is the end of the first lecture. How long is it?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. It's not really long enough. So, I've got my grade school lectures here too. You want to hear about energy flow? Let's see, I want to make sure I get the right one here. Here it is. I think this is it. Sorry this is taking so long. Welcome. I'm glad you could be here today. The 4 schools. You'll recall that there are four schools of interpreting Revelation: the preterists, the historicists, the futurists, and the idealists. I'll give you a brief summary of each one. The preterists. Are you listening? Who was that back there? Was that Troy? This school holds to the idea that the book was written for the people of the post-apostolic period, the seven churches of chapter 2 and 3. In other words, when John wrote to the seven churches, the book was for them. That is, the time during the last of the apostles and shortly thereafter. That would be the 1st and 2nd centuries, AD 50 to 150 or so, 2,000 years ago. In general, this school does not believe that God can see into the future. The book has no message specifically for us, except in a general sense for all Christians of all ages. Any prophecies concern the Christians of that era. These are the preterists. Oh. How's that look? Better. The historicists. That's kind of a funny name, historicists. Sounds like a skin disease. It does, doesn't it? This school teaches that the visions are historical. That is, that they unfold in history linearly. Linearly, you know what that means? In a line. The visions begin at the time of the prophet and extend in most cases to the end of time. Thus, the various aspects of each vision have a distinct fulfillment at a specific time in history. By the way, can you read the letters? Are they big enough? God can see the future and has given an outline of what will happen. All Christians may benefit from a vision, but the visions have specific times of fulfillment. This was the main school of interpretation by Christians during history until about 1600 to 1850 or so. The futurists. This school holds to the idea that most, but not all, the visions have to do with the end times, the future. Some see a gap between apostolic times and the end of time, the church age. Most of the visions are thus for the future and have a fulfillment beyond our time. Many prophecies will be fulfilled by a future Antichrist. The nation of Israel often has a prominent part in this school of thinking. The idealists. This school sees the visions as ideals. That is, they are meant to encourage Christians but have no actual predictive purpose or application. The visions are seen as general ideas and can apply to several situations. Many medieval scholars held to this view, as do many modern commentaries. The detailed character of the visions argues against this view. So, how might we know which school to follow? God has not left us without guidance. To assist us in this manner, at the very beginning, when God started giving apocalyptic visions, he gave a simple vision as an example to show us how we should interpret the rest of his apocalyptic literature. This vision is the dream and its interpretation in Daniel 2. I will explain in detail how it reveals what I feel is God's thinking. Daniel 2 is not a part of Revelation, but it is the first apocalyptic vision in the first apocalyptic book. Don't you like that word, apocalyptic? Daniel, the first apocalyptic book, Daniel. It is easy to understand. The prophet gave an interpretation that is historical in nature. One day, as many men of power do, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, began thinking what would happen after he died. While pondering this, he had a dream, always a significant occurrence to the ancients. He called his professional interpreters, who asked him to tell them the dream, but he could not remember it. and insisted that they tell it to him. And they explained, no king has ever asked for that sort of thing. You're just buying time, he said. If you cannot tell it to me, you will be executed. Kind of a rash guy. The lot of you. Well, Daniel, being one of the wise men, heard a knock on his door the next day. It was the executioner. I'm here to take you to be killed, he said. Daniel was surprised and asked what was the problem. And the executioner told him, and so Daniel went to Nebuchadnezzar and asked for time to pray. God gave him the dream and its interpretation. Daniel said to the king, as you were lying there, O king, your mind turned to things to come, and the revealer of mysteries showed you what is going to happen. You looked, O king, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. Now, I sense most of you have heard of this before. This is not new material, right? No. But think about the public when they hear about this. Might be a little bit different, mightn't it? The head of the statue was made of pure gold, the chest and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of bronze, the legs of iron, and the feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on the feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were broken to pieces at the same time and became like the chaff of a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace. But the rock became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. The image interpreted. That is the dream, and now we will interpret it to the king. You, O king, are that head of gold. After you, another kingdom will rise inferior to yours. Next, a third kingdom will rule over all the earth. Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron. It will crush and break all the others. Now, as you can see from the statue, the head was the kingdom of Babylon, the empire of Babylon. This fell in 538 to King Cyrus. So the next kingdom is Medo-Persia. And that kingdom fell in 331 to Alexander the Great. And so the third kingdom is the Macedonian kingdoms. Those kingdoms gradually fell to Rome, who ruled from 331 till about 476. And after Rome fell, it was divided into the nations of Europe, which exist to this very day. Just as you saw the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly of iron, so this will be a divided kingdom. Yet it will have some of the strength of iron in it, even as you saw iron mixed with clay. Just as you saw the feet and toes, the iron mixed with baked clay, so the people will be a mixture and will not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay. The divided kingdom is with us to this day. The nations of Europe have never been able to reunite, and they have tried on multiple occasions, including the EU, the European Union. However, what nation has decided to withdraw from the EU? Anybody know? England. And England was part of the Roman Empire, and they have refused to join. And so Hitler tried it, the Kaiser tried it, Napoleon tried it, Charlemagne tried it. It never worked. This amazing vision has been true to our day. In the time of those kings, that is the European nations, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever. Note the stony kingdom. It strikes the image on the feet, their end. It destroys all the kingdoms, and it fills the whole earth. Gog's kingdom replacing all others. So as long as we note that the European nations remain, God's kingdom has not begun. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true and the interpretation trustworthy. Characteristics of the visions. It started in the days of Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar. It ended with the setting up of God's kingdom and with the destruction of all the others. It was a historical narrative and proceeded from Daniel until the end of time. Almost all other apocalyptic visions are similar in scope with added details. That is, they begin in the days of the prophet, in Revelation, John, and extend to the end of time. Examples include Daniel 7, the 7 seals, and the 7 trumpets, among others. This was the way these prophecies were interpreted by most Christians until the last 200 years or so. This view gives great comfort, for it conceives that God is not surprised by the future and is prepared for it, and has given to his people through time signs that show he knows the future and warnings so that they may be prepared for it. Amen. It was the standard view for centuries in the Christian church. I will explain Revelation using this view and the chiastic structure as a template. The next meeting will be about the revelation of Jesus' message to the 7 churches. This message is a straightforward one, but is also symbolic of the church through the ages. I will discuss Jesus' person and the message he has for his people. The end. Okay. Be critical. Turn the lights on, would you? How could this be improved? What needs to be left out or changed? Just speak up. You're helping me. It's perfect. Nothing's perfect. Well, what do you think? It flows okay?
When are you going to come back and give us the rest of the story?
Well, I could do this here sometime. I can prepare this. Do you think the combination, I had this in 2 lectures, combining together works?
Yes.
Is it too much information? There's a lot of information there. Do you think the people will be able to get it? You think so? It's put forth simply enough so that they can get it. I try to repeat things.
We're looking at this from the viewpoint of Adventists.
I know.
I'm not sure that non-Adventists will be able to absorb that.
It's an awful lot, isn't it? Do you think I should make it 2 talks instead of 1? Be honest.
Is there going to be space in between so they can like throw out questions at you?
I will, at the beginning, I forgot to put that in there. I'm going to say at the very beginning, if you have a question, you can raise your hand anytime. And what I'm going to do with questions is, if it's an easy question, I'll answer it then and there. If it's a hard question, I'll put it at the end. Because I want to be able to, you want to be able to flow through this, and a hard question can derail it. And so, but easy questions are okay.
But that will lengthen the presentation. You know, you looked at the first one and said it was only 20 minutes, that's too short. But if you give time for question and answers, you're going to have more time.
You're going to have it. Because we have questions and we have something. Like the way he did, I read that one when I was a kid. But the way he explained it right now is so much that I didn't understood at that time, or there's words that I didn't understood. He needs more time, yes. I'm in there. Right?
I didn't catch exactly what he
Well,
said.
are your students believers in this Bible
Well,
study?
it's the general public. I actually have,
It's the general